through the process of downloading some software for your lab. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up a web browser, and there's a couple things that I want you to start looking for. There's a new software virtual VMware put out there. Well, I wouldn't say it's new, but what they just did is they released their VMware Workstation Pro software for free now. So, you definitely want to do a Google search for this. We're going to walk through, kind of just walking through, this particular piece of software. And the nice thing is that they released both their Workstation Pro, which is great for Windows devices, as well as Fusion Pro, which is awesome on VMware. So as long as you're using this for personal use, so this is perfect software for using on your lab. You're going to be able to get this software, and this is really like industry-leading type software that's out there. So this particular blog walks you through kind of the setup, but let's go ahead and get to being able to download. Now, what's important thing here is that it is free for personal use. So if you're going to be loading this on a computer that is not yours, maybe it's your company's, you have to keep in mind that that license is not technically supported for use on that computer. So just something to keep in mind. All right. Here, the other thing is that you'll be able to really load it up and be able to register. Now, from a registration standpoint, one thing to keep in mind, Broadcom purchased VMware from Dell, who was the previous owner. And you're going to have to go ahead and register for a new account with Broadcom when you go to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and click on VMware Workstation Pro, which I'm going to go ahead and set up here. That'll take me here. It's going to say, okay, customer login. Do I even have one? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type in one. So Alex, experthats.com. Oops. How about I actually put in an email? All right. So need help signing in. Now I have a register link. So let's go ahead and click on register. And obviously here, if you already have a registration account, that's better. But let's go ahead and put in alex@experthats.com. ZHVV. We all love those challenge visuals here. All right, so I gotta go check my email address, which I'll go ahead and do. All right, so now I got my code pasted in. Verify and continue. So putting your information here, it's always good. Just wherever you are, right? I'm just gonna be just a lowly engineer. So here I'm gonna put in a password. This can honestly be whatever you want. Obviously, make it something you can remember. I accept the use. Passwords don't match. Of course they don't. There we go. I accept. Create account. Fill out whatever they need. Yes, I want to build my profile, or what, cancel. All right, so now you're here. So now the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and go under software. We're going to find, I believe it is under my downloads, which we're looking for here. Go ahead and put in that new fresh account that you just created. All right, so now we're here, and there's lots of different software that you can probably download. Honestly, you probably don't have licenses for any of them. So what we're going to look for is this VMware Workstation Pro. Obviously, You want to look for the Fusion version if you're on a Mac. But right now, this is what we're looking for. So VMware Pro, and what we're looking for is this one for the personal use. What's nice too is, let's say, maybe you're ultra tech and you're running a Linux workstation. You can download that here as well. So I'm going to download the Windows version. I'm going to grab the latest release. And what they're going to do is they're going to make you click this I agree to terms and conditions. But once you have that click, this link here now becomes a viable. So I'm going to click on it. Yes, proceed. They want to verify who I am. They want to verify the use case. They want to verify all my address and all my business, and they want all of it. So again, I can submit. And then now, when I hover over this, it should say HTTPS download. Now I can actually download the software for myself, right? Put it where you want it, and download. Know that while that's doing that, if I go back to my downloads, you can look just for Fusion if you're on a Mac, and same thing, right? VMware Fusion is what you want. And you'll be able to download VMware Fusion 13 Pro for personal use on a Mac, and click on the latest release. And so you have, the nice thing is it'll work both on Intel and Apple Silicon Macs. So very important for you to use, and if you're on the Mac, regardless of whether you're still on like one of the previous versions with Intel based, or you're on any of the latest M2, M3 type of chips. It should work on that M1s as well, although you'll get better performance on the M2s, M3s, and as they continue improving it, it should work just fine. Keep in mind that there are limits on this, so just that's something you can investigate. I encourage you to investigate as well. So now when we go to our downloads, we see, okay, we got our VMware. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the file, and let's go ahead and get this installed. Definitely recommend the enhanced keyboard driver. It'll make life easier in the long term, even though it does require a reboot. I recommend the product startups. It's up to you if you want to join the VMware customer experience. I'm going to deselect that. Yeah, create new shortcuts. Next, next, next. Let's go. All right, once you get to this point, we're going to go ahead and click finish. Now, because I did install that additional driver, I do need to restart my system. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. All right, we're back. So let's go ahead and let's launch the new VMware Workstation Pro. Now, the nice thing about VMware Workstation Pro is it works on a slew of different hardware. So, it's been around for a long time, so it supports even, older versions of computers. You usually will be fine if you have at least 8 gigs of memory in your system, and maybe it's at least 5 years old. Workstation should run just fine for you. Obviously, the more memory, storage, faster processor you have, the more options you'll have and flexibility you'll have when it comes to specifically being able to run this for your lab purposes. So this is why I emphasize what are you trying to do with the lab more so than anything else. So here, once you get to the VMware Workstation 7 prompt when it first launches, make sure you're using now the personal use, and go ahead and click yes and then finish. The nice thing about this is they did not handicap this software, so it is fully functional, and there's a lot of different features around it. So, when you start looking at this particular piece of software, there's going to be different, ability to create new virtual machines, be able to connect even to other systems. So I do want to focus, as you're going through here, definitely go into your virtual network editor. This is definitely one of the most important parts of this particular software. And it's what really gives it a nice power and capabilities. You have the ability of creating virtual networks, and there's two by default. So like, for instance, if you choose the VM1 network where it's host only, that means it's not really going to be connected to anything else. The only thing it can communicate, so if you build a virtual machine, the only thing it'll be able to communicate it with is your computer. It won't be able to go out to the internet. It won't be on your network, anything else. So if you want an isolated network, that's a good one to use. This NAT one is perfect for being able to create virtual machines that are not on your network, but are using, whether it's your wireless card or your Ethernet adapter on your machine, to be able to reach out to the internet and other systems that way. And so it gives its own private network, still isolated, but lots of flexibility. That being said, you can go in here, enable some administrative changes, and then you can even create your own type of network. Now, what's nice here is you now see this VMnet 0 that it just turned on. Well, what's nice about this one is if you do want your VMs to be on a network that is not isolated, and you want it to be on the same IP address network as your computer, you can put it here. And what it's going to do is it's going to actually pass through, and it will be on the same network as your computer. It can talk to your printers, it can talk to everything else, and other things can talk to it. So, there's use cases for each of these, but typically I would recommend just keep it to NAT. If you're doing, a lot of different servers or operating systems or VMs, virtual machines as part of your network. So I'm just going to leave it set, and here we go. So usually what you want to do now is like, okay, well, we don't have anything to build here, Alex. What are we going to do? Well, this is where you want to start thinking about your purpose. What are you trying to do? And a lot of times, a good place to start is, okay, are you learning what I would call end user operating systems or server operating systems or something else? And so a good place, if you're looking for just operating systems itself, you don't have to go to any of these big box stores or online stores to buy a copy of operating system. For a lab, you have to think about, in order for it to be flexible, not everything has to be fully licensed, right? If you're learning on something, a lot of times what you'll find is people will and companies will put evaluation software out there, trial software, and that's perfect oftentimes for a lab that, oftentimes has a lifespan on it. So let's go ahead, and I encourage you to check out, Microsoft Evaluation Center. Here's the URL, and obviously I'll be put in there. But what's nice about this is you can actually evaluate tons of Microsoft's software, whether that's Windows 11, Windows 10, maybe you want the latest Windows Server. And a lot of these trial software will actually run for like 180 days, so 6 months of software licensing. So, and all this is free. You can just download it and be able to access it. So let's go ahead, and I'm actually going to download. Let's go ahead and download Windows. Let's do Windows 11 Enterprise. Why not? All right, so here's what we're going to do is we're going to go through this process of being able to get it. It tells you the description of what you're trying to get, what you need, what any prerequisites, that type of stuff, and then how to download it. What's awesome too is the amount of resources available to you in order to be able to get help for this if you need to. And it repeats for every other piece of software that's out there. Additionally, there's a Windows and Office 365 deployment toolkit, which is awesome. So, if you're interested in that, definitely click those links and be able to find out more about what that entails. Now, keep in mind when you're doing this there are other requirements, and it may not always be VMware Workstation. So, but the awesome part is, there's different pieces that you can build out in order to support this particular lab. And when you do that, it'll make it very, very easy. If you can actually see here, this lab actually requires a Hyper-V host. So if you're going to want a sort of a lab that builds itself for this purpose, it tells you what you'll need, right? You'll need a Windows 10 or Windows 11 system, in this case Windows 11, with the Hyper-V role installed. You'll need 150 gig of free space. You'll need 16 gig of available memory, 32 gig recommended, and a high-end processor for faster processing. Do you need all this? No. But what's important to understand is this lab environment with the lab guides walks you through learning quite a bit of information, and it kind of builds itself, right? It makes it very easy for you to build. And so you can download the lab, walk through the process, and all of a sudden you have a lab that's built out. Now, now this is kind of out of the scope for what we're showing right now, but let's go back to our Windows 11 system. So I'm going to go ahead and go up here, download the ISO for Windows 11 Enterprise, go through the process. It's just usually just a quick registration about this, right? CEO, let's say United States, one, and download. All right, so now I can quickly download just a 64-bit. Where do I want to save it? Okay, I'm going to save it in my downloads file. Yep. And let it download. Now keep in mind, this is a 5.8 gig piece, so it's going to take 12, 13 minutes to download. So all this stuff, this is why storage is important. You don't have to keep, after you download it, you don't have to keep it. But I do recommend putting it in a place where especially if you need to build multiple virtual machines, all of Windows 11, so that you can test perhaps management of multiple Windows 11 systems, or you're testing on one thing and you're testing on the other something else. You can definitely do that. So there's a lot of flexibility. It's always good to kind of plan out and take a moment to plan out your lab for this purpose as well. So we'll go ahead and let this download, and in the meantime, and then we'll come back. All right, so now we got our downloaded ISO. So let's go ahead and go to our VMware Workstation. Let's create our first virtual machine. So here there's lots of different options. I'm just going to choose the typical. This is where I go through and I try to find that that particular virtual machine. I put that particular ISO. All right, Windows 11, 64. I'm going to give it just an extra name. I'll say VM1. And this is where you can choose where to save it. Default locations are okay. I prefer to actually put stuff in a different folder, ideally like somewhere where I know that I have some additional storage. So let's actually put this in. Put it on my D drive, create a new folder called VMS. So it's going to be in the VMs folder on the D drive. Yep. Only the specific files need to be encrypted. I don't really recommend doing this a whole lot. Just generate on something you'll really need. We're going to just put it as a single file, 64 gig hard drive, that's fine. Oh, yep, these files start small and become larger as you add applications. So we're going to go ahead. That's what's called thin provisioned, which is what we want. Let's go ahead and leave it, finish. It's going to create the hard drive, the virtual machine with that configuration. And now over here on the bar, here we're going to have our first Windows 11 virtual machine, and it's starting up. So it's going to go through and it's going to try to boot off with this. Now keep in mind, you have to pay attention a little bit here because you may have to hit enter, click into the window in order for it to fully boot off of the actual operating system disk. And at times, sometimes it'll freak out. It won't necessarily do it. And so that's where you have to give it a little bit of help. So we'll go up here. We can restart, we can reset. Here we go. Or you just got to be patient. There it is. Press any key. And now it's going to go ahead and go into the Windows 11 setup wizard. Now, the nice thing is with Microsoft Windows operating systems, they have simplified it quite a bit, making it really easy and really simple to start up, especially in a virtual machine scenario. So you just have to go to the base prompt. So here we'll choose English, US is fine. Click Next. We're going to install now. Go ahead and agree to the routine. We're going to do a custom install because there's no upgrade here. So I'm just going to do custom. I'm going to choose that 64 gig hard drive that's virtual. I'm just going to select it and click Next. And it's going to do its thing. Now we'll work through, now that you have Windows 11 booted up and installed, let's go ahead and go through the initial configuration. If you've never done this, this will be a nice quick tutorial for you. So there's usually a wizard when you're first setting up Windows 11, similar to like when you got it, out of the box, when you first got your laptop or your desktop. Choosing the keyboard, skip a layout. Now as this is checking for updates, there's a couple things I want you to keep in mind. You can right click this and look at settings, and you can actually see how this is built out. Now if your system has more resources, obviously adding more resources to VM is going to speed it up, but the more virtual machines you have, then you'll want to tailor this down a little bit. So you have 4 gigs of memory, 2 processors. It has a 64 gig hard drive located here. You have a CD drive, which is currently having that installation ISO. It's currently tied to the NAT network, which if you recall, this is the one where it's not really on your network. It's kind of like in between, but it can still access the internet using your own computer's network connection that it already has, whether that's connected via Wi-Fi or a network, physical cable, or even cellular, depending on your system. It can detect USBs. It has a sound card, obviously a display. And what's nice about this is if your computer has a TPM chip, you will be able to do this. Now, one thing I didn't mention is if your computer does not support Windows 11 today, you should be using Windows 10 Media as a virtual machine instead. Otherwise, you won't be able to get to this part. We'll go ahead and log in. Okay, and we finally have our logged in computer and operating system. Now, if you notice, this screen is rather small. So one of the first things that we're going to do is once it kind of launches up for the first time, you're able to at least do that initial interaction. We're going to go in over here and right click and we're going to install the VMware tools. The VMware tools are rather important because they provide the basis for all the drivers for the generic hardware that was just installed and configured for this operating system. So once you kind of have that set up, it's going to tell you, okay, here, let's go ahead and autoplay. Yeah, we're going to run that. Go through the prompts. Yes. Now it detects the virtual video driver. And now we have a full screen. I'm going to restart the system one more time. And so now, once it comes up, this system is now ready for you to use. You can install software on it, you can install applications, you can use it just as another system. There's a lot of endless possibilities in this regards for how you use this particular system. What's nice about it is it's not your system. It's not the system that is running on your laptop directly, but it's a sandboxed environment that you can really make a lot of changes to and experiment with without messing up your system. All right, so other capabilities that you can do in VMware Workstation, which are really cool. So now that you have this one system here, well, if you want more, it's going to be a real pain to now be able to go through that process. I mean, this took almost 45 minutes of just setting this up. So what can you do? Well, once you have the first one, what you can actually do is go ahead and shut down this particular system. And so now that it's turned off, you kind of see, okay, here's the configuration of this one. What you can actually do is go in here. You can go and manage and you can actually clone it. So you can create another virtual machine, right? Another virtual machine based off of this one. So we can create link clones or full clones. Let's go ahead and create a clone of this one. We're going to actually call this VM2. And I'm actually going to put this back into the same place, VMs. And the one thing I should have done earlier is in here when it comes to VMS, I'm going to create a new folder. We're going to use that new name. And we're going to put all the files in that one, right? Finish. And so now it's going to take a copy of the original one, create a clone of it, and now I will have two copies of it. Now this is where your resources of your system come into play, the physical hardware, because you want to make sure if you're going to turn both of these on, that you have enough resources to run. The nice thing is that VMware has a technology with memory specifically that it will allow for overlapping memory. So you can have, multiples of these going at once. And it's not necessarily 4 plus 4 equals 8. No, that's not how it works in VMware, which is nice. In Hyper-V it is, but not in VMware. So let's go ahead and power this one on, and I'm going to go ahead and power this one on. So that's VM1, that's VM2. So I'll be able to flip both of them now. The heaviest is when you first turn on a virtual machine. That's when it's really going to consume most of the resources. But once it's running, it'll memory optimize. If your mouse gets locked, like if you click in here and you lose your mouse, press Control-Alt on your keyboard, and that'll free up your mouse as well. Okay, you see this is VM2 that's starting here, and VM1 is started here as well. Let's go back to our task manager and see what that's done to our resources. Yeah, so it was at 8 or 9. I think where it was, now it's starting to ramp up and consume that memory as these virtual machines start. But now as you can see here, if I click on this guy, I can log into this one. And if I look at my virtual machine 2, You can see that's currently sitting at the login prompt. So I'm logging into the original, while the second one is just sitting there. So very powerful capabilities. Now that I have two different virtual machines, and this is just a subset of what you can do. All right, so this covers this portion of the VMware Workstation piece. You know, obviously when it comes to resources, you'll have a lot of different options to go by. If one of the things that you can do is go to Microsoft Learn and learn.microsoft.com. This is a lot of free training that'll help you be able to level up, and you can actually go through lots of different courses and labs that'll walk you through this. So something to keep in mind. You know, take training, learn by doing, discover your path. You can actually browse all paths or choose one. And what I like to do is, you know, if you go in here and you say, okay, I want to become a data engineer, for example, here's the learning path for a Microsoft data engineer. Now, Google and AWS and many others have their own kind of free training platforms, but you will not go wrong with this free training if you go through it well. You're not always looking for paid training. There's a lot of tons of free resources out there as well. So I just wanted to share this, especially as you're still looking and continuing with the purpose for your lab. And hopefully you enjoyed this video and this quick focus on VMware Workstation.